JJ, welcome to Breakdown. September the 6th, 5th, September the 5th, we're going to talk SEC Big Ten football.
Week one's in the books.
Week one's in the book. You ready to do it?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's do it. JJ, as you said, week one is in the book. Who came out smelling better after week one? SEC or Big Ten?
We can discuss that. It might be up for debate a little bit. I want to preface this by saying we did not get to do our SEC West preview. We recorded it, but unfortunately the file was corrupted. I had Alabama winning the SEC West, for the record.
I have Alabama coming in second to that big team in Arkansas winning it all. WPS.
Yeah, and I have Arkansas coming in third with Texas A&M second. Who did you have third? Do you know off the top of your head?
A&M.
A&M, okay.
They got the best recruiting class that money can buy, right?
They do. They did have the number one recruiting class for sure.
Okay,
So.
all right. So I got them being number 3.
Yes, sir.
All right.
So just to clear that out the way, that's what we have.
Okay, week one is in the books. Who came out smelling better? Before you answer that question, some of the week one game from the Big Ten. There was Illinois, Indiana, Nebraska, North Dakota, Purdue, Penn State, Michigan State, Colorado State, Michigan, Western Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State, Purdue, Rutgers, Boston College.
Yeah, I think you said Michigan State played Colorado State, and Michigan played.
I had a reverse?
Yeah, Michigan played Colorado State, and Michigan State played Western Michigan.
Oh, my bad. Yeah. Thank you for catching that.
But other than that, that's 100% accurate.
Okay, the biggest game in that would have been Ohio State, Notre Dame. What's your take on
Top
that?
5 matchup.
Indeed.
Yeah, so Ohio State had they came out a little flat. Jackson Smith-Njigba caught 2 passes and got hurt, went out the game. They had another receiver go down, and C.J. Stroud just looked pretty sporadic. They did enforce the run though, and Travion Henderson looked really good.
Okay.
And their defense looked much better than last year. Like you can already tell that Ohio State last year the Ohio State defensive coordinator who went over to Oklahoma. The Oklahoma State defensive coordinator went over to Ohio State. You can already see
a difference.
Yeah, you can already see them making a difference. But they wanted to initiate the run and play good defense, and that's what they did. It took a while for them to pull away from Notre Dame. Notre Dame, I think, got Ohio State to play the game that they wanted them to play, and Ohio State just won the game. Is what my takeaway. What's your takeaway?
Okay. Was that a good? I take away what you just said. Was that a good game for Ohio State to start off the season with a huge challenge like that?
I would say it was much better than last season. If you remember last year, C.J. Stroud also started off looking pretty erratic, and Ohio State did not look well. But they came away with a loss to Oregon. And the biggest difference is they beat Notre Dame, which is very, very important for longitudinally thinking about the college playoff season. Obviously, they looked rusty. They didn't look as dominant as some other teams that we're going to talk about later. But I'm not discouraged. I think that might have been just what they needed. That's exactly what their head coach Ryan Day said. That's exactly what they needed, and I don't know. I might be agreeing with him. What say you?
You know something. It was not what they needed.
Okay.
They needed to come out and dominate as they were expected to do, because they're giving other teams encouragement when they play a tight game like that against Notre Dame. You know, the bigger the win, the better it's always going to be for a team. In my mind, you know, you can say a close win is a learning process, and that there is some truth to it. But you know, I just don't buy it. I mean, I don't buy it in the overall scheme of things. But that's just me. Some other games, JJ. Michigan. Talk about Michigan and Colorado State real quick.
So Michigan came out with their week 1 starter in Cade McNamara, and he led pretty much exclusively field goal laden drives. He did not come out looking strong.
One touchdown.
He did throw a touchdown. Well, he threw a pass that the receiver Wilson turned into a touchdown, but that was much more on the receiver than I think on the pass. But he did in the stat sheet he did throw a touchdown. And he did not throw a pick, although he threw a very interceptable pass that had Colorado State's defensive back been a little bit better. I think he should have caught that. So he looked really bad. Meanwhile, J.J. McNamara was 100%, 4 for 4, and he ran in a 20-yard run. So I'm really excited to see what he does against Hawaii. But yeah, Caden McNamara did not
You're
not do himself
excited
any.
to see what he does against Hawaii. Hawaii is 0-2.
Yeah, and
With,
Colorado State.
with a loss to Vanderbilt and Western Kentucky. That excites you to see what they're going to happen. What he's going to do against that team?
Yeah, because he needs as many reps as he possibly
Okay.
can, because he is the quarterback of the future for Michigan. If Michigan wants to reach their ceiling, their potential this year, it's going to be on him. So he needs the reps. He needs that as much as he possibly can.
I understand what you're saying, but
So I am excited.
That game should be.
He could be playing against a high school. I'd be excited. I'm excited to see JJ McNamara under center. That's
if it was a fight, they stop it in the first quarter. That's all I'm going to say. JJ, an exciting game to me. Penn State and Purdue.
That was exciting.
Penn State won it.
They did. They came back.
Started the season off with a conference game. That was a big game for both teams. Set Penn State up to go 4-0 until they meet Minnesota in week 5, at least in my mind.
Yeah, I mean that could be potentially what happens, but I mean they do have a out of conference game against Auburn at.
I'm sorry. I was looking at Purdue. You're right. They play Arkansas State. I'm sorry, Ohio, Auburn at Auburn, and then CMU.
And then they play Central Michigan, which is obviously not a win either. That you can just write in the books. Those Chippewas, they'll fight. Yeah, they were pretty impressive. Sean Clifford played up and down for.
I agree.
For a while, but he gave them the winning drive when they most needed it. Purdue's quarterback Alex. It's not Alex O'Connell. I can't remember his last name though.
Okay.
He's really good, and he played, but he outplayed Sean Clifford. But at the end of the day, I think the better team won.
Before we look at next week's game in the Big Ten, just still in this week's game, aside from the Ohio State Notre Dame game, what was the most impressive win for you? And we will say the Big Ten was undefeated outside of conference.
Yeah, so far this season, the Big Ten has not lost to any teams except for other teams that were in the Big Ten.
Correct.
Honestly, I might go Rutgers, Boston College.
I would absolutely go there.
Boston College took the early lead. It was at Boston College. Rutgers came back and they won, and they needed to win because the ACC has not shown well for themselves. Old Dominion beat Virginia Tech. Appalachian State should have beat North Carolina. North Carolina State should have lost to East Carolina. So the ACC has not composed well for itself outside of one team that we'll talk about later, who gave the SEC their only loss so far. But I would say Rutgers.
I would agree. That was the most, aside from the Ohio State win over Notre Dame, Rutgers win over Boston College was the most impressive to me and to you as well. Okay, JJ, next week's game coming up, Northwestern and Duke. That's a rivalry in per se because they play almost every year. Another one is Iowa and Iowa State. Which one of those games excites you the most?
I would say the Cy-Hawk rivalry, just because it's a rivalry game, that's always exciting to me. This week, Iowa beat who did Iowa play?
State?
Was it North Dakota State or was it just North Dakota?
South Dakota.
South Dakota. It was just South Dakota. They beat them 7-3 by way of two safeties and a field goal. That was how they got to 7 points, not via touchdown. So, one of the worst offenses last year seems to have gotten worse ever since losing Tyler Goodson, their best player on their running back. Spencer Petras should not be a starter, but he must have beat out whoever else they have. So, I mean, having said all that, Iowa I think has won either 4 straight or 5 straight against Iowa State. So
yeah, they have.
No matter even with that said, and even as how putrid their offense looked, it's at home at Iowa. The Cy-Hawk game, it's a big rivalry that Iowa's dominated, and I'm going to be very interested in that game.
Yeah, of the games this coming week, there are no big games. That one's probably the biggest. Illinois hosts Virginia, which is Illinois is 1-1.
The Wisconsin-Washington State will hold my interest a little bit just to see how Wisconsin's offense looks against like a legitimate team.
At Wisconsin too.
At Wisconsin, yes.
Yeah, that's true. Some of the ones that really down to Michigan, Hawaii, Michigan State, Akron, Ohio State, Arkansas State, They took that state out of that Arkansas team. Ohio State would be in trouble, but since it's Arkansas State, it is what it is. You wanna go to the SEC? You got more in the Big Ten.
Yeah, the Big Ten East specifically is just basically is my, for all intents and purposes, it's a bye week for them.
Yes.
The Big Ten West is scheduling a little bit harder, but as we know, the Big Ten West is not as competitive as the East. So, yeah, we can move right past the Big Ten onto the SEC from that point.
Well, let's go to the SEC.
Let's move to the SEC.
Okay. Vanderbilt is 2-0.
Vanderbilt is undefeated. Yeah,
No other SEC teams can say that.
that very true because no other SEC team played in week 0.
That's
The
right.
SEC did just as well as the Big Ten. Some might say better. They went undefeated on Saturday, 11-0 on Saturday, and then
And Thursday and Friday.
and sure, and Thursday and Friday.
Okay.
I don't think they played Thursday and Friday, but they went.
They did. They did.
Okay.
But go ahead.
But they the only team to have lost at all in the SEC this week was LSU.
An interesting loss.
Yeah, Brian Kelly lost his first game to Mike Norvell's squad, Florida State. They played in New Orleans, but that proximity wasn't enough for LSU, and their kicking game also wasn't enough as they got blacked in the final seconds.
A
So
blocked extra point prevented in overtime
yeah.
in the final seconds. So that's a tough way to lose. I still think Brian Kelly is going to make some noise in LSU. Let's talk about the other games, though, that were pretty big in SU. Pretty big in the SEC. SEC taking down the Pac-12. You want to start with Georgia? You want to start with Florida?
Let's start with Georgia.
Okay, Georgia.
Let's start with the reigning defensive champions,
Okay.
defending national
They're the
champions.
defending national champion. They hosted Oregon for all practical purposes. I'll call it a host. What you think about that game?
I think Oregon was ranked 11th in the country, and they did not look anywhere near the 11th best team in the country. And you have to credit a lot of that to Georgia's defense and Georgia's offense. We all know Bo Nix. He was a staple.
The starter quarterback for Oregon.
The former Auburn quarterback has transferred to Oregon, and his nickname came with him. They call him Bo Picks, and he threw a couple of picks. He did not look good, but then again, the entire Oregon team looked unprepared.
Agreed.
I think a better quarterback could have made it maybe, a 40-20 game or something like that. But I still don't think Oregon had the horses.
Oregon
to
did not
beat
score a
Georgia.
touchdown.
Yeah.
And only scored one field goal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Their offense looked putrid, and that was because of Georgia's defense. Georgia's defense, I knew, even though they lost, 13 people or whatever, I knew that they were still going to be. They're going to reload, and they absolutely did that.
Well, I sit here and said that Georgia would be nothing like the Georgia of last year. Time will tell. I'm still not convinced. I know they displayed it Saturday, but I'm still not 100% convinced. What about the other SEC takedown of the Pac-12? Florida.
Florida and Utah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Utah came. They came from
Top 10 school.
Yeah, 9th in the country. They came over to the Swamp. They played in the Swamp, and they looked like the better team for most of the game, but what they did not have was the best player on the field. Florida had that. Anthony Richardson is my early favorite for Heisman if we're just going to do one game sample sizes. He looked dominant. He made some plays that you only see like a Vince Young or a Cam Newton make. He has a rocket arm, and he's 6'4", built like a linebacker, and can run like the wind. So, Florida, they're in year one under Billy Napier. They lost a lot of pieces, but they're going to be very interesting. They might have the best player on the field on a lot of games.
As far as height and trophy, what would one game sample? The guy who wears number 15 for Florida, they call him AR-15.
Not anymore. He wants the people to stop, but that's what they used to.
Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah.
I was most impressed by him by anyone. But I will say this: you cannot discount the 6 touchdowns thrown by Bryce Young, or the 6 touchdowns that he accounted for, Bryce Young, as far as the hypes for Alabama. Even though Alabama was playing Utah State, not nearly the competition that Florida was playing. 6 touchdowns is still 6 touchdowns in the books. But yeah, I was most impressed with Florida, with Anthony Richardson, and I'm going to be most impressed with their game this coming week because they hosting. Who they hosting this week? This coming week?
They're hosting Kentucky. I would imagine they're. I don't know the line on that one, but I would imagine they're between 3 points and 7 point favorites for that one.
Would you take Florida and give 6 points?
Oh, I'm taking whatever Florida is. I'm taking Florida. I saw the Kentucky game, and I was wondering how they're going to place their receiver Wandale Robinson, who got drafted in the 3rd round to the Giants. And it looks like they did an admirable job replacing him. They had the Virginia Tech transfer, Tavion Robinson. He looked pretty well. He looked pretty good. So did Dane Key, the true freshman receiver that they have, and Bowers, the other true freshman that plays. They look good. What did not look good, unfortunately, was the offensive line. Will Levis did throw for over 300 yards, which he's only done 3 times in his career before this year. But yeah, the offensive line, they could not get a run game going. They were able to get pressure on Levis, and that was Miami of Ohio, and that was a home game. Kentucky was playing a home game against Miami of Ohio. Now they go to the Swamp in week 2. They still don't have their best player, and Chris Rodriguez. Yeah. He's still suspended. Yeah, and I just when you just saw what their offensive line did do and what their defensive line, really didn't do. I could see Anthony Richardson running all over Kentucky next week. Wow. And it's running all over Kentucky, throwing all over Kentucky, and just generally doing whatever he wants.
Kentucky will have an opportunity to game plan for him more so than Utah had to game plan for him. My guess, and I don't really know, but
yeah, you can scheme all you want, but people, people.
I hear what you're saying. Well, let's talk another game, JJ. Top 25 matchup in the SEC last week. Arkansas and Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. Arkansas came away with the win. They were a 6-point favorite. They won by 7. Cincinnati missed a lot of opportunities. What did you take away from that Arkansas-Cincinnati game?
Arkansas secondary better not hope. They better not rely on what they relied on going against Cincinnati. Cincinnati was ranking in a new quarterback. The Bryant was the heritage of Desmond Ritter. Honestly, quite frankly, the receivers got separation on Arkansas's defensive backs way too many times. For my liking as an Arkansas, I'm not objective about it. I'm an Arkansas fan, so I'm not gonna even pretend to be objective about that. I did not like that. I would not like. Next week they play Spencer Rattler, South Carolina. I know he's new to South Carolina, but that was a concerning point to me. Like just the plays that they gave up. Another concern was the amount of shots that their starting quarterback KJ Jefferson took. He's gonna have to slide more. Was my initial thoughts, but he looked really, really good. I was concerned with them losing Treylon Burks to the first round of the NFL draft, if their vertical passing game would suffer. But it looks against Cincinnati, who did lose obviously 2 dynamic cornerbacks to the NFL as well, the Jim Thorpe Award winner, and then a top 5 pick in Sauce Gardner. They lost both of those guys, so I was not. If you told me Arkansas was going to beat Cincinnati and by a touchdown, I would have expected them to have been more impressive than they actually were.
Okay. Arkansas put up 31 points.
They did.
31 points against Cincinnati. That's nothing to sneeze at.
That's this year's Cincinnati, not last year's Cincinnati, for the record.
Exactly. And 31 points against Cincinnati is nothing to sneeze at.
It might be something to sneeze at. I don't know if it's
Cincinnati is a very good team. Their receivers, they got multiple receivers that run in 4.3 40s.
Yeah, they do.
Arkansas will not be playing every
school. They play in the SEC West.
I know that, but they're not going to be playing every school with multiple receivers running 4.3 40s. I'll say that.
I don't know. They play the second hardest schedule in the country, Dad.
Arkansas did something Saturday that they had not done since 1975.
Okay.
They opened the season with a win against the top 25 team. In 1975, they beat USC in Little Rock. I remember it well. They had a player, a linebacker that just stole the show by the name of Dirk Winston. And I'm sure there's somebody out there who know who Dirk Winston is. But he was drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, played with Pittsburgh. I know he won at least 1 Super Bowl with Pittsburgh. May have won another one, I can't remember. But they hadn't opened the season against a top 25 team with a victory since 1975 when they did it against Little Rock. That was a very good year. As far as their defense go, I agree. Their receivers got Cincinnati receivers was running wide open. Last year Arkansas played a lot of zone. My guess is they got to go back to zone this year when they come up against speed like that. That's my guess. Any other games from this week in the SEC you want to talk about before we talk about next week and get out of here?
Yeah, this week in the SEC, those are the highlights. Mississippi State dominated Memphis, but that was to be expected. You know, those are the games.
Texas A&M against Sam Houston. I watched part of the game before the rain delay. They had like probably about a 3-hour rain delay, but they were not that impressive. Although the score in the first half it was 17-0, I believe, but they were not impressive in that game.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of it. Haynes King missed a lot of guys on the field, and he beat out Max Johnson, so it makes you wonder what their quarterback played. But I was never as bullish on Texas A&M. Just because they have the best recruiting class in the country this year, a lot of those guys aren't going to even play, and some of the ones that do play are going to have some growing pains. So, I think Jimbo Fisher is a great coach when he has a great quarterback, and I don't think he has a great quarterback. Okay. And Haynes King did nothing to change my thinking.
He didn't impress me this week either. Let's talk about this week's game, though. I mean, he did not impress me last week. Let's talk about this week's game. The biggest one is probably Alabama at Texas. The Longhorns.
That's where game day is going. I still think Kentucky Florida is a more interesting game to me. You know even Tennessee Pitt is more interesting to me because Texas. I don't think is a top. I don't know about
Tennessee Pitt, but go ahead.
Well, Tennessee Pitt. I think Tennessee will be in the top 25, and Pitt's in the top 20.
I agree.
So I think it's going to be a top 25 matchup. Texas, I don't think is a top 25 team, and I just think they're just going to get destroyed by Alabama.
I agree with you 100%. But the one thing that I take into consideration when I say it's a key game is that we are talking about Texas. That's like even when Michigan is bad, they're still Michigan. And they got all kind of eyes on them. And it's an interesting game when they play. And these are going to be teams.
It's not going to be an interesting like that. I think you're feeding a narrative. I think you're feeding a false narrative. It's interesting to some people. It's not interesting to. It's not interesting to half of the people on this podcast.
It's an interesting match.
To half of the people.
You did mention the Florida, Kentucky, and we talked about that. The Tennessee Pitt. Last year, Pitt won that game.
Yeah.
This year, Tennessee has to go to Pitt.
Mm-hmm. This time, Tennessee would be playing the right quarterback, though.
And who's going to walk away with the win?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to lie. Keaton Slovis did look pretty good for Pitt, the USC transfer, too.
Pitt is a top 20 team. Tennessee is not.
I'm going to go. I'm very bullish on Tennessee. I have them coming in second in the East. And I know this isn't a conference game, but I'm really bullish on Hendon Hooker and the Tennessee Vols offense. So I would pick Tennessee to beat Pitt.
So would I. Some other interesting game, Vandy against Wake Forest. As I said, last year Wake Forest started the year 10-0. Right now Vandy is 2-0, and they're hosting Wake Forest. Do they have a shot?
Does Vandy have a shot?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, they have a shot. Wake Forest, they went like 9-4 last year. Maybe better. Maybe they won 10 games.
They were 10-0 at one point.
Okay, so they did a little bit better than I thought, but I don't think that they're a powerhouse, an unstoppable powerhouse. I think Vandy has a shot, but what they have done against Hawaii
and
Elon isn't. I would still pick Wake Forest to win, but say Vandy won by three points. How surprised would you be? Would you be shocked? Just like
I would be totally shocked. If they won by 1 point, I'd be totally shocked.
I mean, if they
won 2 games last year.
That was last year. Michigan won 2 games the year before they went to the college football playoff. People year over year, you lose.
And people were shocked when Michigan won some of the games that they won as the year went.
Some people more than others.
That's true.
Me less so than others too.
Okay.
Yeah, it would shock me if I can see Wake Forest. What I think is going to happen is I think Wake Forest is going to blow out Vanderbilt. It would not shock me if Vanderbilt won against Wake Forest. It would shock me if Vanderbilt blew out Wake Forest. That's where I'm at.
Okay, JJ. Mississippi State playing Arizona. They go to Arizona.
Yeah, it should be interesting.
It should be. And the one I want to close on, JJ, is Arkansas at South Carolina.
That should be really interesting.
Arkansas is a 9.5-point favorite as we speak right now.
Yeah.
What makes this game interesting to you?
Spencer Rattler. He makes it interesting. He was last year the preseason Heisman favorite, preseason favorite to go number 1 overall. He has talent, and when you have the best player on the field, and that player is touching the ball every offensive possession, like that's the great equalizer. If he greatly outperforms KJ Jefferson, or KJ Jefferson gets banged up or something like that, I mean, he has the talent. Like we all have seen it from his recruiting, the number 1 quarterback recruit in the country coming out. All of the hype that he had. If he harnesses that talent that he has, Arkansas could be. I mean, we just talked about Arkansas secondary, so I mean, Arkansas could be in trouble. And I do know South Carolina also did get a receiver, a pretty good receiver playing for him too.
Does Arkansas cover 9.5?
No.
Okay. It's an early morning game, 11 o'clock Arkansas time, noon Michigan time. I say Arkansas blow them out. Arkansas hasn't even come close to playing up to their potential. But that's why they play the game. So we can see what happened. JJ, it's been a good one. Week 1 is in the book. We're ready for week 2. I'm still excited. You still excited?
It's just the beginning of college football season.
For some teams, the excitement kind of fizzle, and especially they go 0-2 and
Yeah,
0-3.
Even Nebraska, who went 1-1, I'm sure their excitement has fizzled noticeably.
I would agree. I concur. But that's it, JJ. WPS, we'll pick Suey. You got anything else?
The Bengals will also be going to the Super Bowl this year, just in case you were wondering.
Peace out. There you have it.